Hello, welcome to Season 1, Episode 4 of Examining Fictional Heroes and the Authors Behind Them. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the characteristics of courage and confidence because they are so closely linked. If you do not have confidence in yourself, you would not have courage. So that's what we're going to do. And we're also, for the first time in this series, delve into several different quotes from different stories to illustrate these two characteristics. Excuse me. Courage is very much like strength. You don't just magically wake up that way. You gain strength by training, by doing hard things. You gain courage by doing hard things, but also by standing up for things. Sometimes, for lack of a better way to put it, I would say you have to stand up for small things. If you're not willing to do that, you will not stand up for big things. If you think you will, you're fooling yourself. John Wayne once said, "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway." Theodore Roosevelt, when he moved out to North Dakota to start a ranch, he said, "There were all kinds of things I was afraid of at first, ranging from grizzly bears to mean horses to gunfighters. But by acting as if I was not afraid, I gradually ceased to be afraid." The first quote that I am going to use for my fictional book will be from Louis L'Amour's book, The Walking Drum. "There is no miraculous change that takes place in a boy that makes him a man. He becomes a man by being a man." So you see, there is no difference between what men have believed throughout time and what the fictional hero believes. It's the same thing. And one would not make a great fictional hero unless he had courage. So, aside from The Walking Drum, the first book I'm going to draw on for this episode will be Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan at the Earth's Core. By the way, see what great shape this book is in? I think I've had it since I was 15. Anyway, one may analyze the deeds of a man of action and speculate upon them, whereas the man himself does not appear to do so at all. He merely acts. And thus it was with Tarzan of the Apes. He saw an emergency confronting him, and he was ready to meet it. For since the moment that he had known that there was a beast upon the trail ahead of him, he had had his weapons in readiness. Years of experience with primitive men and savage beasts having taught him the value of preparedness. Now, I am going to set this volume aside because I will be pulling another quote from that story. But we see that Tarzan was prepared not only by having his weapons in hand, but because of the life he had lived. Years of experience. The next source will be this book, Indigo Shafter by Louis L'Amour. This is a great book. If you can get it, get it. It's a gold mine. There are all kinds of great quotes from this book. Great story. It's excellent. A man does what he has to do. A brave man? What men call a hero, Shafter, is merely a man who is seen doing what a brave man does as a matter of course. So, once again, as a matter of course, it's the same thing as being prepared from a life of experience. They do things as they come. They are always ready because they have always stood up and done the right thing. Next, I'm going to take a couple of quotes from this book, Solomon Kane, by Robert E. Howard. The first being from the story Red Shadows. Cain could not even have fled had he wished, and he had never fled from a single foe. Cain tensed himself for the struggle that could end but one way. He strove to rally his waning forces. He was weak from loss of blood and fighting one person already, and he saw another enemy approaching him, and he believed this to be the end. Still, he stood his ground. Spoiler alert, he did get out of it, but I won't tell you how. The next quote is from the story Moon of Skulls. Whether man or beast trailed him, he knew not, nor did he care overmuch, for he was prepared to fight human or devil who barred his way. So, I think the next several quotes are very similar to that, in that he's not letting things prevent him from doing what needs to be done. The next quote that I am going to read is from this collection, Conan the Freebooter. The story is called Black Colossus. And this is referring to Conan. The approaching figure went not furtively, like a thief, or timidly, like a fearful traveler. He strode down the nighted street as one who has no need or desire to walk softly. An unconscious swagger was in his stride, and his footfalls resounded on the pave. Well, suppose you should expect that Conan would be full of confidence. And it shows. And if you show confidence, you are less likely to be a victim of a crime or anything of that nature. Having and showing confidence is key. Again, I'll get back to this because this quote is very similar to the last two, I believe. The trail was narrow, and only occasionally, where it crossed some ravine or shallow gully, was there a place where one might either descend or ascend from it. To meet a savage beast upon it, therefore, might prove, to say the least, embarrassing, but Tarzan had elected to go this way, and he was not in the habit of turning back, whatever obstacles in the form of man or beast might bar his way. So, Solomon Kane was prepared to fight man or devil who barred his way. Conan has no need or desire to walk softly. Tarzan has elected to go this way, and he was not in the habit of changing his mind. So these people are all expressing a high level of confidence and courage, but they don't see it that way. It is part of their nature. Again, a quote about Conan from The Hour of the Dragon, which is the only full-length novel that Robert E. Howard ever wrote about Conan. All of his other Conan stories were short stories. Conan is actually in disguise at this particular juncture of the story as he's trying to sneak into an enemy stronghold. This man carried himself with an erect, aggressive bearing that was too natural for him to realize it himself, much less dissemble it. So again, his confidence causes him to carry himself in a particular manner. If you have confidence, it shows. People recognize it. People will be drawn to you because of that. Troublemakers will avoid you because of that. So it's necessary to have these things. Next will be from this book, A Law for the Stars by John Morrissey. Very good little book. Rhine was a blackjacket. He walked where he chose, when he chose, armed or unarmed, among enemies or friends, in light or darkness. Once again, his confidence allowing him to do things, dangerous things, that need to be done. Many of us may never, ever face a dangerous situation. But if you do not believe in yourself, you will not be able to step up to it if you do. Excuse me. I've said before I'm struggling with allergies, and I'm very sorry. I tried not to do that. The next quote from Call of the Wild by Jack London. If you guys are not familiar with Jack London, This book and several of his other stories circulated around the Klondike Gold Rush. John Thornton asked little of man or nature. He was unafraid of the wild. With a handful of salt and a rifle, he could plunge into the wilderness and fare wherever he pleased, and as long as he pleased. So he has every belief that he can take care of himself regardless of what he might come up against. Finally, I am going to leave you with one more fictional quote and one more quote from a man that many of you possibly know. Fictional quote, the book Swords of Charizard by Robert E. Howard. The story is The Curse of the Crimson God. No cautious or timid man would think of interfering in an affair which was none of his business. But O'Donnell was neither cautious nor timid, and something in his wayward Irish soul would not let him pass by a cry for help. Well, obviously, being cautious, overly cautious, or timid would not make a good hero. The final quote that I'm going to give you tonight is actually from Billy Graham. Some of you may know who that is. If not, possibly you might like to look him up. Courage is contagious. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened. I saved those two for last for this reason. In our society today, we have more than enough cautious and timid men. We need brave men. We need men of action. We need people who are going to stand up and do what is right, regardless of what it might cost them. Thank you for listening. I appreciate any likes, dislikes, or comments. I definitely appreciate follows. I very much hope that I will have enough of that at the end of this season to justify an episode where I can actually get to some of your responses and things of that nature. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.